Welcome to another episode of the All Tens Podcast. I'm your co-host, Josh West. With me, as always, Clay Harrison. Today, Clay, we're welcoming in another special guest. He brings 20 years of engineering and operations management experience, and he's currently the owner and president of the Alternative Board, otherwise known as TAB, out there in the Triangle in your neck of the woods, Clay, in North Carolina, helping business owners overcome common challenges to grow their business. Welcome to the pod, Matt Stevens. Matt, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, guys. Happy to be here. Appreciate it.
Matt, I knew that you were an engineer, but 20 years kind of throws me off. Can you just walk us through, before we jump into TAB, walk me through the 20 years of engineering? Josh also went to Georgia Tech, so I feel ganged up on here. I went to a liberal arts school.
Josh will like this then, because I go to the actual good engineering school in Georgia. That was Mercer University. So when I went to Mercer in 1997. I was the only other engineering school in the entire state. If you wanted engineering, you had to go to Georgia Tech. I went to Mercer, and there is actually a difference in the degrees. So I have a Bachelor of Science engineering with a specialization in industrial. And so my first major job outside of college was at Gulfstream Aerospace in Savannah, and worked there for about 16 years. And then we moved to North Carolina. I continued on in an operations role at a company called Zurn Elkay, and then bought TAB in 2023. But I worked my way up from an industrial engineering level 1 to a senior operations manager at Gulfstream. I had about 130 people under me at the time I left Gulfstream.
Gotcha. And so when you guys moved up here and you decided to start doing the TAB thing, what was that? What clicked? What was the aha moment for you that made you go from employee to owner?
So actually, since I was young, I just have felt that it's weird because I didn't know why I was thinking it when I was young, but I felt at some point leading an organization, a business of something would be something I wanted to do. And as I went through my career, that kind of got put on the back burner. Having said that, as a manager and of increasing more people, I did kind of feel like that to some extent, that I was, not an owner per se, but I was, responsible for people and teams and motivation and stuff like that. So essentially, I just got to the point where I felt like I was going to be the happiest if I owned my own thing. And so then I started pursuing what that could look like, and through a couple discussions with people, one of them being a franchise broker, I found my way to TAB or the Alternative Board. And I had never heard of that or peer advisory boards in general, but I decided to look into that further, and I'm glad I did, because I'm now 2 years into it, and I think that was the best decision I've made in my career.
Cool. That's a big leap to make. How's it going?
It's going very well. And it wasn't a big leap for me in the sense that I was not going to be, it was not sustainable to stay in corporate. Just too opinionated, I'll say, and don't care what people think. So the leap into TAB was a leap from a standpoint of I had to now go out and market myself and sell myself. So that was a huge change, to your point. But it was part of, what I bought into. The franchise did come with a certain marketing package that I felt was what I needed in the beginning, and that's why they have it. So when you start out, you don't just fall on your face. And because of that, and because there is a TAB peer in the Triangle as well, named Keith Weaver. So that's actually who I bought the franchise from. It did not come with any customers, but when I bought that, it just felt like that was the best move. All my skill sets were well utilized within TAB, running board meetings, coaching people, helping people understand how to build a team the right way, and what good looks like is what I brought.
Yeah, so let's dive into that, Josh. I hope that you've recovered from the Georgia Tech attack, but if not, I'll just give you a minute. But I'm gonna ask a couple more questions. So Josh and I also have had careers before what we're doing now as EOS implementers, and I think probably a lot of the folks who might see this or listen to this have heard of things like Vistage or Entrepreneur or EO or even YPO or things like that. Tell me about how TAB, the Alternative Board, fits into that landscape.
First off, I think all of those organizations, have value and serve a certain type of customer. TAB's difference or angle, if you will, it seems like it goes more after a small to medium-sized business owner, all the way from solopreneurs to people that own, $20, $30 million organizations. So I guess that's what sets it apart a little bit. I feel like there's an ecosystem that serves those owners, and especially with the coaching and stuff like that, and the way the meetings are run, which is a very much focus on the owner. I think that's the difference between the other organizations as well, is those monthly board meetings, to me, are very much owner and member focused. It's not about bringing in speakers or anything like that. It's just about solving problems for the people in the room.
Yeah, cool.
To that end, Matt, are you attracting certain industries or niches that Tab specifically caters to?
I would say no. In fact, I actively try to not go after a certain type of industry or anything like that. What I have found, what I figured out really in the last year, is that I have one singular product. There's one thing I have full control over, that I craft, that is what I'm selling, and that is the experience people have when they come to a board meeting. And so, to make that the most optimal experience, I need the best people in the room. So I go after people that I feel will add value to my board and can extract value from the board. If they have no problems, if they are everything is just gangbusters, they're probably not going to feel like they need something like Tab. And I'd be quite honest, they're just lying because everybody's got problems. But to be fair, there are certainly people that just the money's coming in. There's not a lot of day-to-day stuff for them to worry about. So yeah, I get it. But for anyone else, again, especially people in the first couple of years of ownership, I've built a board specifically for them, and I found a lot of reception to that. I hope that answers your question, but
It does. So let's dive a little bit deeper into that. What are the most common problems, challenges, and frustrations that people bring into the room?
they run the gamut. For the first year, it was honestly all over the place. But in the last, I'd say 6 to 8 months, and maybe it's due to changes in the federal government, but sales, outreach, maybe customers being impacted by federal government decisions. That seems to be a lot of what gets talked about. Hey, this was working last year. It's not working this year. What are some things we can do? But other than that, I've had people, have issues with, a silent investor that they're having to deal with, all the way to they want to sell or they can't sell, and what does that look like, all the way to just team dynamics and general things that you experience day to day in your company, and maybe they just don't have experience in solving that, so they bring that challenge to the board.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. Like, I think that most entrepreneurial leaders who've been in it, who've been at it for a while, have kind of heard of these kinds of peer groups, right? And one of the things that we always talk about, especially in the session room when we're helping clients implement EOS, is that like operating system is part of the equation that helps you be successful. And in fact, in my own experience, EOS was the thing that helped us get successful. Then I joined Vistage and industry-specific peer group, and that helped me approach problems from a different angle, right? EOS kind of is a framework and a set of tools and disciplines that you kind of install throughout the organization. But there's this other part of being a leader, which is it's a little bit lonely. You might not feel comfortable solving all the problems with everybody on the leadership team all the time. It's good to have a sounding board before you kind of look like an idiot or make a big change at the company. And so for me, Vistage, which was local, and not to jump to the end, I'm also a member of Matt's Tab group now. So so I was in Vistage and I moved over to Tab, not saying anything, love both, but here I am today sitting in Tab. But my peer group locally in Vistage was about like local, understanding what was happening in the local economy, understanding what was going on, like understanding the machinations of the city and the state that I lived in. And then an industry specific peer group that I was in was with a bunch of other people who owned IT companies, so I could like kind of get deep insight and have problem solving that was really esoteric, right? Like really about like antivirus solution, like real nerd stuff. But both of those things, the two different types of angles of approach for a peer group plus EOS were the things that kind of like really kind of ignited growth for us, because I felt like I was getting everything that I needed. Well-oiled machine inside the company, really deep insight and knowledge outside of the company. Does that resonate with you, Matt?
It absolutely does. And I have met prospects and currently have board members that belong to industry specific peer groups, and I encourage it because I think some things are solved best with people in your specific industry, especially if it's an industry that is very specific in terms of regulations and rules. But I also think the board, any peer advisory board, but certainly the ones that I'm currently facilitating, we want those different challenges. And like you just said, there's not a lot of people to talk to. If you are the owner of a company, whether you're by yourself or you have 10 employees, it's almost more scary when you have employees, because now you're both responsible for yourself and that business and them. And if you're like, hey team, not sure what to do on these next few things, what do y'all think? That's not a good discussion you want to have with them. They don't want to know that you don't have the answers, even if they assume you probably don't have them all. They don't want you to talk to them about it. So the board, a peer advisory board, is the best place, I think, to go with that, to say, hey, this is what I'm dealing with. I don't have an answer. What are your thoughts? Help me get through this. Or let's just talk through some of the solutions I do think are the right next steps. But before I implement one of those, let's poke holes in it and make sure that I haven't missed anything. And I think that's where the board can add a tremendous amount of value.
Josh, I want to ask you a question, Josh.
Okay.
In your kind of entrepreneurial journeys, did you do the peer group thing? Did you do the advisory board thing? How did that happen for you?
I would say I never had an official group like that. I certainly had mentors along the way. So I was usually I'm more of a one-on-one kind of person. I like one-on-one over groups, and so I think I gravitated more toward people who were a little bit older and more experienced and were where I wanted to be. And I had a few of those people kind of take me under their wing along the way, and that proved to be invaluable for me.
Okay, so let me ask you a question. You were doing this is a podcast where we just ask questions. I probably don't need to ask permission to ask questions. You can whatever. But like you were doing like what digital marketing stuff, right? In one of your places. So you're like running a great digital marketing agency. You're figuring all these things out. Where did you go? I'm asking like with genuine curiosity. I don't know what you're gonna say here, but like when you guys got stuck on something, I've been in session rooms where I'm literally meeting with a client. I'm helping a business. Doesn't matter the industry. And I'm like, hey, what are your peers doing? Like maybe there's a metric that they're like, man, we're really pissed off that we're at 80%. I'm like, well, what's the industry average? And they don't know. And like, what if the industry average is 55? And like, you guys are like, sometimes you just got to protect your confidence, whatever. But like that context can really help. So in that digital marketing world where I imagine there's a bunch of metrics flying around, how did you know what good was?
So certainly we weren't the only game in town, and you know other people. Additionally, right across the street from Georgia Tech, there was an incubator. So ATDC was really kind of the first big one, and over the past 20 years, it's Atlanta has become a hub for that. But there were multiple other entrepreneurs just down the hall from you. And so there were times where someone may just pop into our office and they're not in our industry at all, but everyone was in that incubator willing to help each other out. And so you were never more than 1 to 2 degrees away from the network and getting to an answer or something that, you wanted to know about. So it was a tight-knit group there.
Cool.
So you essentially created a board-like atmosphere with that peer group. And so whether or not you found yourself gravitating to a group, you had created a group. So
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So unofficially, in that sense, is kind of how it developed for me over time.
Yeah, that's cool. I think of all at the beginning, and also there's just this thing when we started WorkSmart 25 years ago, we were all like 22, 23 years old, right? And we didn't have anything to do. We'd sit around and commiserate over the foosball table after 6 p.m. or whatever. And then but if you're like a 40-year, whatever, if you're an older entrepreneur kind of figuring out like some of that social fabric isn't as easy to find. And so like it's a really interesting thing to think about how like timing or where you are in your career.
Well, and along those lines, Clay, obviously in EOS, we have our proven process and the timeline and the journey that we take with clients. Matt, when you're talking to a prospective member of your TAB board, do you have anything in the way of a proven process where you can really outline for someone what's about to happen? How long does someone stay in your group? Give us a little bit of color around that.
Essentially, when I'm talking to a prospect and I'm kind of describing what that experience will be like, especially now, I give less details and try to talk to, here's some of the industries involved in the boards. Here's things I think you can get out of it. Here's what other members have gotten out of it and what they think. But at this point, normally what I do is just invite them to come as a guest. And honestly, that's just the best way to experience it. There's never a cost or anything. And it also gives the board a chance to vet a potential new member in that setting instead of me just going, oh, hey, I've met this owner. They're going to be a great fit. Like the board really needs to kind of bless that. So, and really both parties just need to make sure it's something that's a good fit. So, because again, that's the only thing I control is is that experience. And so the people in the room can't just be people that are willing to pay or people that got problems. It's got to be owners that are going to be a good fit with that group. And that's something I've seen, especially now that I'm just completed the second year of owning this franchise. The boards are gelling, and the meetings are seemingly more, hey, I got a problem to solve, and like, oh, hey, I want to get an update on what you're doing and how's it going with that thing we talked about last month. And yeah, I'll give you an update on me, but it may not even be that every member's bringing a challenge every month. It's now to the point, I think, where they're invested in each other. They want to see each other succeed. A lot of them are working together. I've had a joint venture pop up on Clay's board, not with Clay necessarily, but two people that got together and formed a joint venture, and they would have never known each other had it not been for the board. So it's those kind of things that I see now as valuable as problem solving and just coming. And so I try to explain that when I'm talking to a prospect, but a lot of times it's like, look, I can tell you, how good it is, but you need to come experience it for yourself and see if it's something that you would find value in.
If somebody's listening, Matt, and they want to like kind of dip their toes in the water and see what it's like to be on a board, how can they best find you?
They can find me on LinkedIn, where my email address and certainly any just LinkedIn message would hit me and just reach out, and we'll get a conversation going. I'm in the middle of building my next board now. So there's the board Clay's on that I call the executive board, and there's another board called the premier board. And I'm building, I don't have a name for the third board yet, but I have a few events coming up in August that if anyone's interested, I'd be happy to invite them. Just some social events just to mingle and meet and greet and network. And from there, I'll set the dates for the first board meeting for that group. But I'm always happy to talk to owners. And there's people that might even be early on as an owner and not ready for a board yet. And I provide coaching to them as well. I have 5 customers currently that just get coaching through myself or Tab.
Cool. Joshy, before we wrap it up here, anything else to add? Any nuggets or anything to take from this for our listeners?
Well, I think that, one thing that you touched on earlier is that it's critical to have a framework and it's critical to have a peer group. So whether that is EOS, Tab, Vistage, or any of the other ones out there, I am just a fan and someone who is cheering for small business in America. And so if you are experiencing the same challenges that your peers are, try some different things out. Go guest at places like Tab. Seek help. You're not alone.
Wow, this is like took us to therapy at the end there. Matt, put you on the spot. We always end the podcast with a little nugget or best piece of advice. If there's an entrepreneur listening right now, besides joining a Tab group board as a guest, any advice that you give someone listening today who might be feeling a little frustrated?
Answers are out there, and support is out there. So look around, like Josh just said, whether it's Tab or Vistage, C12, EO, anything. And there may be areas where certain groups are better than others, and find those and seek out local chairs, or reach out to me and I can help you as well, because there's Tab owners all over the country. But just know that you are not alone, even though you may feel alone. There are groups out there ready to support you. And I would like to say, just real quick, having lived in Georgia for 16 years, the consensus in Georgia is that Georgia Tech is the best school in that state from an engineering standpoint. But for a long time, Mercer was the only other one. So there was this little bit of like, I'm sure Tech didn't feel like there was competition, but Mercer always felt like a little brother to them. I do acknowledge, but yes.
It reminds me of the Duke-North Carolina basketball rivalry. Like, you've been playing basketball in North Carolina for forever, and Duke thinks they are just, like, as good as we are. That's just kidding. I'm just kidding.
I wish it was that equivalent. It's not. It's not that equivalent.
I think Carolina – did Mercer beat Duke in the NCAA tournament?
Mercer beat Duke, and I was at that game. It was Duke.
Okay. Well, we don't have to talk about that anymore. Anyway, go Tar Heels. That's the podcast for the day. I want to thank wholeheartedly Matt Stevens from Tab for joining us. He's a friend of mine, and happy to have him on the pod. Josh, good job by you. Thanks to all of our listeners for listening. Rate us, comment. If there's somebody you want to have on the pod, let us know who it is. If there's something you want to hear us talk about, please let us know. Otherwise, we'll see you next time on the All Tens podcast. Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.